And we are live. Welcome to America Heals. It is our 31st episode.
Snowball effect.
Oh, what is this? Oh, this
is a crash at a.
This is our lead-off crash.
Corner at a race. Yeah.
Luckily, no one was hurt.
We've got audio with it as well here.
You see that Felix Rosenquist is out of the car and okay. My first thought is that
just starting out. This is a montage of.
Here's this crazy type of event in which basically two people coordinate a routine, and one of them had getting hit by a spear. And the ability that these athletes have is pretty crazy, considering one wrong move and you can get seriously injured.
Oh. Dave and I do this as a hobby.
It's a steep learning curve, man. Oh!
Yeah.
Currently, the world record for fastest two-wheel mile was made by Terry Grant in a Range Rover, and it really makes us wonder if we truly need two wheels to drive a car. And not to mention how bizarre it all looks.
This morning, so let's hold our breath for him. Let's wish him well because he goes through the right, now the left. This is where he got the.
During a trip to Universal, a ballet dancer was taking a picture with one of the performers. And
welcome to America Heals, everyone. We do not know what's happening.
Complete surprise.
It's just a montage of
the Stitch costume showing off his flexibility skills.
We're just kicking off a show while we send out some tweets. Let me send this out. Wow.
Oh, great. Straight into an ad. Well, I guess that's the end of that.
That was funny.
The ad came earlier this time. It must be 2 minutes of watching or something that gets it.
All right.
That was
wild. Through somebody.
Matt, welcome to the show. We do have a jam-packed show this evening. I'm Marty Blue over here, and we've got going around the horn. It looks like also Blue over here. And we've got going around the horn.
Whoa, we lost Marty. I guess we should try and. You dropped out for a second. I was looping. I was doing the Inception thing, but you froze for 20 seconds.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you're back now.
I was doing a loop of my own, so that was like very much an Inception thing. Like
Sweet.
3 different times in my head.
That's how we do it, folks. We're all amateur audiophiles here. Okay, no one's getting paid for this work.
Whack! I'm gonna have a problem over. I'm gonna throw up here in a minute from that audio. That's cool. It's all good.
Yeah.
Let me try to get welcome everybody. Welcome to the show. I'm gonna go around the horn and say their names, and then they can talk so that I can recover. We got Dave, we got Zach, we got Jeff, and we got Tim. What's up, guys?
What's up?
this and that. Rocky start into an early commercial. Things are good here. Kansas is having nice spring weather. We have a little bit of rain. We've had some warm days, some cool evenings. It's the best time of year to be in Kansas. The spring and part of the fall are really, in my opinion, excellent.
Some of the best sleeping weather of all year.
Oh yeah, right. Nothing like a little rain to really make for great sleeping weather.
We get about 4 days of spring. It's the best 4 days of the year.
That's true.
We go right into summer.
Yeah, Dave and I are both in the same town. I guess I don't know exactly how far apart, but obviously within the same town, we can't be very far apart.
Those 4 days of spring. That's right. and then everything turns brown again.
Yeah, it gets hot and dry and windy, and yeah, summer here can be pretty bad.
Zach, how you doing? It's still light outside where you're at.
Yeah, yes, sir. Past week has been great weather that I've spent inside studying for midterms. So
nice.
Yeah.
And Tim, you're the farthest east of us tonight. You're in Chicago. How's it going out there, man?
It's going great. We've had some rain. It's the second Sunday in Easter, and I'm still standing. A lot of preachers take this Sunday off, and I'm like, yeah, I feel good. I feel loose. I'm just gonna go for it. So it was good. It's been a good day, but it's towards the end of the day, so.
No, I'm
a little punchy.
I took today off and just realized how fucked up I am. So it's
I
really
know,
good,
man. I hit the wall about halfway through the day. I'm like, oh shit! Everybody leave me alone. Happy Easter! I'm done.
Yeah, no, it's life. It's springtime. It's people. I'm sure the accountants feel the same way around tax time. It's just like everything has to go through the gamut.
You said the T word.
Oh yeah.
I took all my documents over the other day.
Oh, it's so crazy.
I've always paid a CPA. My dad used to do taxes for a business, and he'd spread out across the dining room table, the formal dining room table, and he'd be in there for, in my opinion, 2 months doing tax work. So from the moment I was responsible for my own taxes, I just started going to a CPA. It's just like I'm just not going to spend hours banging my head against a tax document. I just don't do it.
Yep. No.
An important gift is understanding the giftedness in other people. I don't have any desire to take care of my own taxes. I'm happy to utilize someone else's gift of knowing and just loving to do taxes. You know, I'm like, I want to help you help me.
Yeah. And
This public
TurboTax or whatever. I know
This
it's easy
public
to do
service
yourself.
announcement is brought to you by plumbing, because sometimes you need to hire a plumber.
Well,
Yeah.
seriously.
I mean, $100 or $200 a year to have somebody, if a weird document shows up, to just like text them a picture of it and say, "What is this?" and let them handle it. Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, pastors have totally jacked up tax systems anyway. So,
Oh, I know. You guys have.
They like, as soon as they hear we're clergy, they pull out a manual with a folder. They
Where
start
do you
flipping
stand
through
in your house
pages.
when you think about this? And you're just like, oh my God. All right. And of course, the political spectrum is a little wider here tonight, because we've got Dave, who we're really glad to have you back, dude. And
yes,
the last time we were on, we talked about some very libertarian policies. And so as we talk about taxes, I'm sure it's your favorite subject as well, right?
Yes, my favorite subject. So everybody gets excited this time of year. You know, they're getting their taxes back, but really we should be pissed because the government actually was keeping all that money interest free. So however you want to look at it, it's not the libertarians' favorite time of year.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I understand.
Well, withholdings, I mean, that's obviously individual people's decisions. I've known people that have minimized their withholdings, so they do have to cut a check. I knew a guy who had gotten his withholdings down. He was pretty excited. Over like 10 years, he'd gone all the way down. I think one year he owed $9 or something. He was like literally withholding a specific figure to try and get his taxes to come out dead even. So, yeah, I mean, withholdings, yeah. I mean, if we actually pay quarterly, so we kind of do, I guess you'd say, like the ultimate withholding. Like we have to estimate our quarterly taxes and pay them every quarter. So we put a lot of money in, and then it's always really great when you get to the end of the year and you owe like the equivalent of another quarter's taxes. It's like I wrote fat checks 4 times a year, and now I get to write a 5th one.
Yep.
And then I have to do my first quarter basically at the same time. So you're basically, anyway, quarterly taxes are no fun, but it's a whole separate joy.
It's separate, except that it's not separate. It's the truth of the fact that all the politics that we do, all the election discussion, all of the drama, all of it has to be paid for. And our system is a capitalist system that taxes decided to tax the income of its citizens, which is a decision, that was made that was different than it used to be. Our system, really, the original American system, and anyone can correct me as we want to go through this, but it was really designed to be funded by tariffs, and it was designed to be able to, raise whatever money. It was supposed to be a minimalist government, and of course, we have a large federal government now, and there's a big debate about how large it should be. There's a big debate about should there be other bureaucracies that answer to a CEO and a board of directors and make streamlined decisions based on the best profits of the company versus the greater good of the society or the environment or whatever. So we balance all these issues out, but at the end of the day, in this country, people who have income are taxed. If you have a lot of wealth and you can manage that wealth in different ways, you don't receive the same taxes. And I think if you want to break up into the next level of wherever you're at in the economic ladder, taxes are a smackdown as soon as you reach that next step on the ladder, and many times for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. People who, I can remember friends of mine who moved out east and they were talking about I'm going to make like 230 grand. And then, 10 years later, they're making 400 grand. And then each step of the way, they're just getting their ass handed to them in taxes to pay for a lot of stuff. And so they really never made that much money.
Yeah, I had employees that were like, the worst thing they could do is work a few hours of overtime because it added to their check but because the check was above average, they'd actually get taxed more, which was head scratcher to me. Mm-hmm. So instead of like a 20% withholding, they'd get a couple extra hours of overtime. They get taxed like 30%, and they actually take home less money. Now, again, like Dave was saying, over the year, of course, that's overtaxing their wages, and they will get it back at the end of the year or owe less or what have you. It'll come out in the wash. But I thought it was the weirdest conversation. First time I had that with an hourly associate. They're like, if I don't work more than 5 hours of overtime, I don't make any more money. I was like, what? I thought that was just the strangest thing. Now they do make more. I mean,
so I've got a buddy that it was a few years ago now. His accountant called him in December and said, "You need to go spend about $40,000, otherwise the government's going to take it," because he had just been bumped up to a different tax bracket. And so he went out and he bought a work truck for $40,000 and ended up breaking even on that. But Marty, you're right. Originally, there was no income tax. The tariffs were a large part of the federal income that the federal government would get, but also the federal government would tax the states, and the states got to decide how to pull those taxes from the citizens. And I think it was the 16th Amendment that allowed the federal government to tax us directly on income. Mm-hmm. And the first couple of years of that, they discovered that if they tax people at the end of the year, 90% of people couldn't afford to pay it. So that's why they started, doing the automatic withdrawal from checks.
Wow. Because there's no way you could live and then come up with that nut every single year and not just build yourself a hole that you could never get out of.
And you can't put 90% of people in jail either for tax evasion. So they tried to switch the system up a little bit.
Interesting.
Yeah, and take it out. Basically, take it out of your check like they do if you're deep enough in debt to the government or anything else. Take it out of your paycheck before you have a chance to spend it.
I mean, I know I beat this dead horse every time. Like every time we talk, I bring this up, but it just seems like it's so painful to be talking about how someone who works 3 hours of overtime, is not gonna make it. It's not gonna make it break even when we totally cut the taxes out from the top 10% of the biggest earners in our freaking country, who have the most money and the most ability to give back. And we're like, you don't have to pay anything back. Don't worry about it. So meanwhile, we are fighting and scrapping like, at 3 hours of overtime would kill me. I can't do it. It has to be 5 or more, And it's like, well, if you're in the top 10%, don't worry about it. You don't even have to pay taxes.
So that's there, and that's true. I did want to get onto the cancel culture thing tonight. We could stick around with taxes for a second while we do this. I got to throw this out there as a okay. So Lutheran pastors. Tim and I are both Lutheran pastors, and it's freaking awesome. I found out I was reading, geeking out on a liturgy website. That it was a work day, whatever. I was reading, and I come across this weird article and it said, it talked about a composer who wrote 4 songs in the Lutheran hymnal, who had been busted and is, I think, currently in trial or heading into trial for grooming and sexually assaulting dozens, if not tens of people.
Wow.
Daughters and mothers from the same family that he would have as students in his piano classes, and just years. So and he's a Catholic. He's a Catholic songwriter. Was very well renowned. You definitely wanted this dude on your resume as a student or whatever. So, and I didn't hear about this. I read this in January, and it happened evidently in November, and so. The Catholic Church sort of was immediate in saying, all right, this guy is off the roster. We're not using his songs. As Lutherans, we are also in a lot of ecumenical dialogue and agreements with the Catholics and Episcopalians and others. And they immediately said, we should all eliminate these songs from our hymnals. And I was like, whoa, okay, hold on. I've never gone through this one before. And so I read some documents about it, and I was realizing that Okay, so we've made all these statements about how we're going to treat women, stand up for equality, stand against, more important than equality, even stand against abuse purposefully. And so thinking about how to undo this kind of craziness, especially these, I got to tell you, the other element of this, as a guy who is part of his job is to pick the songs for church, the three of these things are absolute go-tos. They're great friggin' songs. I use them all the time. So I was like, oh shit. So I talked to my congregation about it and we had this great conversation, but there were several people who sort of threw the idea out of, man, I love those songs. And I found myself in the argument saying what the argument that the larger church has come down on, and saying, as a victim, if you're a victim of that and you know this is going down, every time you hear that song, it could be another wound. It could just be another layer of abuse on top, especially if we know better. That's kind of my story. It's a scandal within a scandal. We're going to, I've got my list of double check to make sure not to use those songs next to my, my Bible and my hymn book, because these are real issues. And I think to take it seriously is to be an example to the community of how we have to deal with the, as Ibram would say, the being anti-racist or anti-abusist. That's my word. That's a terrible word, but that's kind of what I'm trying to say. And that's different. I want to put this other. That's different than the gotcha cancel culture, I think, at some level. That's just looking to pick you off for making a mistake in your life. And the heavy freight of this, being a church situation with songs that bear throughout people's experiences in their lives, they have emotional attachments to, with lots of layers of their psyche.
Right.
I think you have to come down hard as hell on that. And I think you have to distinguish that from the hand fighting that we're doing all the time. So I just want to lift that up as a kickoff, because I think there's a reason why we have chosen in some ways to say, stop that bullshit right now, cancel that. And then other times where it's like, that's an overreaction. We have to be able to be human beings. So I know cancel culture keeps popping up in the news. And so that was my kickoff. If there's any comments or thoughts about that story, but it's a crazy thing. And there you go.
It's an interesting story. I think what makes it venerable and honorable to cancel the songs is it sounds like he was using his music as one of his tools to assault people.
Yeah.
So if it had been someone, for example, who turned out to be a mass murderer, but had written these great songs, there might be an argument of like, well, the songs are still good. Those are two separate parts of his life. But the fact that he was assaulting students, I think that really crosses into the his music really is a product of his terrible behavior, and I think there's some validity to canceling that. What always comes to my mind when I think about those situations is, for example, there's a ton of modern medicine that came from Nazi experiments on people they were killing, and that's obviously grotesque and horrible. But you also don't go and throw away those discoveries because the source is so terrible. I mean, the source is terrible, but the information has validity. Some of the studies, for example, on what percentage of your body can be burnt before you die. Those things were unfortunately horrible, torturous experiments, but that information still stands. And do you throw out the good information because of the bad source? So it definitely opens into a lot of very complex discussions. I will say this, they're going through and renaming many, if not all, of the illnesses and diseases discovered through those experiments, because some of them were named after the Nazis involved. So, taking the honor off of it, I think is good. But, you can't. So there's just a lot. There's a lot wrapped into that story, and it's a very interesting story.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's also a side topic of, when we first had some of the first issues, the one that really pops to my mind is one of the first sort of cancel culture issues, was that the Chick-fil-A, if you guys don't know, Chick-fil-A is a Baptist company, and they have prayers in their business meetings and things like that, which I find slightly disgusting just to start with. I think freedom of religion is important in our country, but they have a right to have their corporate culture. Then it came to light that, their senior management was actively funding against gay marriage. So actively trying to restrict people's rights. So I think a lot of us decided, I don't think I want to support a company, whether indirectly or directly, profits from me buying chicken if they're a hateful organization. Now, was that right? Was that wrong? Is that cancel culture? I don't know, but I think we all have the right to decide, in a smaller example, I've met a business owner. He's a total asshole, so I don't go to his business. I think we'd all support that concept. I've met the guy that runs Dan's Chicken, and Dan's an asshole. I'm not going to go to Dan's Chicken. I think you can take that to any scale you want. It also, to me, there's a lot of situations when corporations decide to be political, which I scratch my head on that too, as to why you would want to do that. And then if you do it, you have to assume the responsibility that there's going to be political backlash. So, Coca-Cola, for example, is making a stance on this voting bill, and I disagree with that voting bill also, and I applaud Coca-Cola for standing up for it. But I do not believe Coca-Cola is surprised that people that politically disagree with them are calling for a boycott. I mean, that's just what's naturally going to happen. So, yeah, those are most of my starting thoughts on cancel culture. We are in a capitalist society, and you can choose to buy or not buy something for whatever reasons you have, and that's supposed to be one of the market corrections we have, right? Is if somebody's doing bad things, we don't buy their product.
Yeah, there's an old saying that if you lose every great thing that was done by a bad person, you're not going to have much left. And especially when you start looking back centuries ago, where by today's moral standards, a lot of the great things were done by horrible people by today's standards. But I mean, I agree with getting rid of those hymns, especially if it was used in those acts, and if it was used to kind of bring that about. The first time I really ran into cancel culture, I'm a big Kansas City Chiefs fan, and my favorite thing is going to the games and all the chants and everything that we do. And there's a song that's played after every touchdown. And it's very common, actually. It's in all kinds of colleges too. The da 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 da. Hey, I know you guys have heard it, but so apparently that song was made by somebody who's either a pedophile or rape. I don't know the full story. I don't remember. It's been quite a few years.
Gary Glitter, and the song is "Rock and Roll Part 2," if I'm not mistaken.
Thank you. And so apparently he was not a great guy, and so the Chiefs decided to just get rid of the song altogether. It was one of the favorite things for fans. They didn't care. They said, we're just not going to play. A lot of colleges around the country didn't. They kept going. And so, I mean, it is a decision for each organization. I think I probably agree with the Chiefs on that. I think, like was mentioned before, if you're a victim of someone, and you're, exposed to these memories that you don't need to be, I don't think that's fair to them either. But there comes a point that I'm concerned about with cancel culture where things like what made America, I mean, again, like the Constitution, some of our founding documents, they're written by people that own slaves. They're written by people by today's standards, did not have a very high moral standing. So, where does this go? How far does this go? And that's the only thing, I mean, really that concerns me about it.
I think the slippery slope. I think the slippery slope in most cases has some grounds, but not a ton. And so, for example, with our founding fathers, there's a huge difference between denying the fact that Thomas Jefferson raped his slaves and deciding that Thomas Jefferson needs to be deleted from our history. I think both things can exist in the same story. I think you can believe that Thomas Jefferson slept with an underage slave and wrote some of our great founding documents, and it can be used to help understand the times and our founding fathers without. I think there's a supposition that if you admit that Thomas Jefferson raped his slaves, that then you have to tear down all of his monuments and statues. And I think those two things can exist in the same mind. You can understand that he was
or
one of
that
our
you can't
fathers.
or that you can no longer love Thomas Jefferson. And
Right.
as an American, we like to love our mythology made up in our mind of whatever that is. We want to feel positive affirmations about it. And
Right.
Zach, you were trying to say something. I think you got cut
Oh,
off.
was he? I didn't see him.
Yeah, I guess kind of jumping right into the conversation. When it comes to Thomas Jefferson and our founding fathers and a lot of the ones who owned slaves or did abhorrent things, I think the best way to go about it is to just take a holistic view, right? I think, as Jeff said, two things can be true at once. George Washington owned slaves, and that was a terrible action. George Washington also led the Revolutionary Army, right? Two things can be true at once. So I think that's just the thing we need to go forward.
And he was also a noble thinker in terms of using his power. He could have abused his power, and he did not. So there's a whole bunch of other elements that show that he had nuance even within himself.
Right. And, there's even further nuance in Thomas Jefferson, right? He originally had wrote freeing slaves into the, I forget if it was the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution, but one of those documents, one of the founding documents, he originally wrote that in. But then there's also the hypocrisy of you owned slaves and you raped underage slaves, right? So I think just giving people all the information is where we need to go forward when it comes in regards to our founders.
I agree.
I think that it's important to name when something is evil. And so, like the example about the Nazis, it's like, yeah, we gained some valuable information, but we also know that shit was evil. So it's not we would continue to do that to gain that kind of knowledge because the shit's evil, right? I think the same thing is true about this composer. It's like, even if those were the best frickin' songs you've ever heard, that guy, he doesn't represent the church. His actions are evil. So we have an obligation to set an example and say, we are not going to play these songs because that was evil. And I preach grace first, And so grace is all about God's unconditional love and forgiveness through Jesus. Jesus is the reason that God forgives our sins. And there's personal grace for that guy. That guy can receive grace from God. Jesus can love on that guy, but I'm just like, I'm not playing your shit, dude. And I pray for the victims. My heart is with the victims. Fuck that guy as far as I'm concerned.
It's about boundaries too, and recognizing nuance. And I think that's the problem in a lot of our conversation is, let me throw this in a different way. I think we'll all have a similar reaction, but what do you do with Bill Cosby's stuff? What do you do with Fat Albert? What do you do with that now? Right? Like, cause it's the same kind of a question. It's everything that it touches. You end up going back to being like, dude, that sucks. I mean, it all wrinkles into a guy who used power to get where he was, and his art stands.
Yeah. First question I'd have is, does playing an episode of the Cosby Show earn Bill Cosby any money? Because if it does, then I say we should not play.
And maybe then does that money go to his victims? Because that would be okay.
Right? Yeah. Does he owe enough money to his victims that every penny he makes goes to his victims anyway? In which case, maybe there is a reason.
Make a Cosby Channel at that point. Make him famous. I don't know.
It's just such a great question. It's just such a great question.
Well, he's in prison, right? He can't earn an income, correct? Right. So,
I think you can.
Royalties. I think it depends on the state. My understanding.
I don't think you can earn money from prison. Like, I don't believe you can, do phone interviews and get paid while you're in prison. But I assume you can still get residuals from things you made while you were free. I don't know where that money would go if you can't. That's a good question. Bill Cosby is a great question. I mean, what he did was so horrible. But again, he also made some great television. Between Fat Albert and the Cosby Show, I mean, that's some quality television right there. It's not like he was a shock jock comedian that it's not like Andrew Dice Clay and then turned out he was bad, in his personal life too. Right. I mean, this is someone who portrayed really idealistic values.
He had formative impact in families and kids, and and decision making, and he had a moral standpoint to every week kind of give his opinion on how to do the right thing.
He was called in to public forums as a moral voice. They're like, well, let's hear from Bill Cosby, and he would, give his spiel. That was while he was doing that to women. I think that's the biggest issue with Bill Cosby is in the midst of his earning our trust, he was doing that to women, and he got away with it for a long time. And it's terrible to think that those women felt silenced for so long before they were finally heard. That's scary.
It is scary. I guess he's got to be dropped. Again, we're not talking about a founding father that was participating in behavior that was appropriate for the time. We're talking about a modern person that was raping and sexually assaulting women by drugging them.
Unconscious women, man. It's hard to defend that. If you can defend that, then
It feels like another one of these situations, where we all say we're against, rape, and then someone we care about gets accused, and suddenly there's all this humming and hawing. I think he pretty clearly did what he's accused of, so I guess he has to fend for himself. I guess it's all gone. I guess burn it all. I don't see myself wanting to watch any of his shows. Fat Albert's a bit different because it was animated. You don't have to see Bill Cosby do it, but it's tough. It's tough. It's sad when someone breaks your heart because you find out that they were evil.
Okay, so then pull back for a second in this sense that we're sitting in this little shithole right now in this conversation. What do we do? Because I'm, forgiveness. I'm in the business of forgiveness. I talk to people about, Marty, I fucked up so bad. How do I change this? And we're like, all right, let's lay some shit on the table, man. And, let's get real for a while. Those are moments of amazing growth and healing and transformation. And the last thing I would want someone to feel at that point of being low is that there's no chance for me to come back.
And it's one of the biggest...
Part of the American dream is that you can have a second chance. And so if we lose that completely, holy cow, have we lost any reason to get better?
Well, as you say, Marty, all the time,
do some things deserve a second chance?
It's a great question. That's where we are right now.
And in your situation, you're talking. Well, in the example you're talking about too, you're talking about somebody who in their life has made a mistake, and they're coming clean to you, and probably to come clean with their family, and make amends and pay for their mistakes and go forward. Maybe I missed it, but I haven't heard Bill Cosby express any remorse. I might have missed it, but I believe he's claimed he was innocent the whole time. And so, I don't really need to forgive someone who doesn't say they've done something wrong. It's for me to make a decision, right? If they're not going to admit they did something wrong, then I can just look at the facts of the case and the fact he was convicted and say, well, then he's, I don't think he deserves a second chance until he admits he screwed up his first chance. You know what I mean?
Right.
I think Cosby is a little too easy of a conversation, right? Because I think we can all just say, hey, objectively wrong, man deserves to be in prison. I'm coming from a place where I'd never consumed much of Cosby's art or entertainment.
Right.
So he's meaningless to me. I don't care about him. But
thank you for
I'll throw it.
It's fair. It's fair.
Yeah. I'll throw a scenario that happened somewhat recently. So I think the new editor of Teen Vogue, she was getting promoted, but then it resurfaced that a decade prior, when she was 17, so when she was a minor, she had tweeted a couple of very racist, anti-Asian remarks. And since then, very different person, has grown, has changed, has even publicly apologized, way prior to this resurfacing. So what's the scenario there? Do you hold a 17-year-old over some objectively racist remarks, or do you allow them to move on? And this person ended up stepping down from Teen Vogue, so they did lose their job.
It's a great question. First thing I'm always concerned about in these situations is, you read some of these comments. I think there's been other situations where there was one, I think, where it was a male high school athlete who had the N-word on their Twitter or something, and if it got found out later. And I guess I get the fact that people were minors, and I get the fact that, sometimes when you're a minor, you do dumb things. I always just scratch my head and think, why have such an unforced error? Like, why was this person on social media talking bad about Asian people as a minor? Like, what was going on in their life, you know, that they chose to take time? And I don't mean like, because I believe in her scenario, it was some editorial comment. Like, it wasn't like she called somebody a name. She chose to write a comment criticizing Asian Americans. It just, to me, that's just such an unforced error in a situation that just, I guess I just scratch my head and think, why did that person feel the need to do that? Well, I want to forgive a minor.
17, Jeff. I was a dumb shit when I was 17. Yeah. I was a dumb shit again at 19, probably 18 as well. And then again, and I'm 48. I'm still a dumb shit, but I don't do as dumb shit as I used to do.
And it is a different era. I mean, I didn't have social media when I was 17. You know, at 17, I think we had AOL dial-up. You know, there was no place to put your comment on the internet where it would reside for infinitum. You know, so it is
sticking up for it, Zach. I want you to I want you to know that I am not sticking up and saying that as a dumb shit. I'm just saying, where is the line? Because human beings are humans and they're going to do things. Is there a way for someone to say, "Dude, I used to be a fucking racist idiot, and I said these things." And for people to accept that, we haven't developed that muscle yet, I don't think, culturally. Tim, Dave,
I think part of it is what I said before about this guy from the church. There is definitely the avenue for personal redemption for that guy. He can repent for his sins. He can receive forgiveness. But professionally, as the church, we can't afford to embrace him because then it looks like we're just embracing another sex criminal as the church. You know, how many priests were allowed to continue?
Okay, well, if you want to bring the church into it, and guys, I'm sorry, but I got to do this right now. How the fuck did I have to run across that on a weirdo Thursday afternoon liturgy site where I was the only guy who told my whole colleague group that this had happened and nobody knew about it? And I'm the only male in Denver in the group of pastors that I'm in. They're all females. They're all feminists. And I'm the one bringing that news?
Right.
Because they weren't reading the stupid thing I was reading. But again, that seems like it's half-assed cancel culture.
Right.
Like, why didn't we make that guy's name known? Why did nobody know about this?
Right. Well, and in terms of Teen Vogue, I just want to follow up. No, it's unfortunate. You know, it is unfortunate what happened to that young woman. And there is obviously the path for personal redemption. She may not be racist. She may hold nothing against Asian Americans. But given the climate that we're in right now, where we're literally have to trying to convince people not to hate Asians, they can't, as a corporation, continue to embrace her because it's like it's a mixed message. We really love Asian Americans, but we're also going to move forward with this woman who personally can experience full redemption, but professionally, sorry, we got to let you go.
Yeah,
right. And so to further that point, and Marty, you kind of mentioned this, and Jeff, you as well. I thank God that when I was a teenager, there was no social media. Because I can't imagine the trouble that I would have gotten in. I don't remember doing any racist statements or any racist things, but I was pretty stupid, and I said some stupid things. And if that was captured, forever, I can't imagine how that would affect my professional career. But at the same time, it is what it is now. And so, yeah, those businesses, they have to be worried about their own reputation. They have to accept responsibility for the employees that they have. And so I don't blame Teen Vogue for doing what they did. That's just that's where we are now.
Yep.
And it's an easy decision, you think?
Yeah, in this case, yeah, especially with the current climate, with the shooting with the Asian women, and just I mean, with all of that snowballing, I mean, I don't see how you can make any other decision.
And I just ask that because that's how board structures work, right? That's how it's made in the corporate boardroom. Is that question is there any other decision to be made? And everybody's like, hell no.
Hell no.
They're gone.
I think also we have these interesting conversations. Now, obviously, losing the editor of Teen Vogue is going to have repercussions on through the rest of her career. But we talk sometimes about decisions that a city clerk has made or a slur they've made, and they lose their job. And I feel like a lot of times people respond with like, it's horrible, it's awful, whatever. I've lost jobs for multiple reasons. It's not like a job is a guarantee. And if you have a public job, like working for the city or state, or working for a publication that needs to sell itself to its readers, you should understand that your public image is going to be part of your job. And I kind of wish
Zach.
He brought up the whole.
I know he brought it up, but he didn't give us an opinion. I was just realizing that.
Yeah, for me, when I first saw about it, it was like, that's my age, right? Or I'm 18, but same kind of age range. So I found it interesting because something that I've been taught by almost every professor, every high school teacher, every authority figure that I've ever had is anything you put on social media, your bosses, your professors, everyone who is ever going to hold anything is going to be able to see it. Right. So right now, if you could go through my Twitter, my Instagram, any social media I have, and I've purposely made sure my boss, if my boss ever sees this, it will be fine, or I'm okay holding that position. So
you've got that editorial eye at age 19.
Yeah. So it's something that I think my generation is like has directly in their head. I think the person we're talking about is more of a millennial during that transition. So I think it is kind of there from your or kind of your mindset where you weren't being watched, but then all of a sudden they are being watched. Where for me, we know we're being watched, so we try to be more careful.
Yeah, I've said for a long time.
You might be the exception, because as a hiring manager, I have actually gone in when I've got some younger applicants, and I go to social media and I check exactly what you're talking about. And there have been more than one occasion where I passed on somebody just because of ridiculous things that I saw on their public profile. And so wow. I think that's great that you do that, and I think it's great that they're teaching that. I would hope that more people would listen to that and adhere.
Mm-hmm. I would tell everybody listening that anything you do on the internet, you should assume is going to be public. I mean, you can think it's private, you can think it's secret. I mean, I know people that are on closed Facebook boards where they share adult pictures and things like that. You should just assume that anybody in that group could be screenshotting that and sharing it to your boss. I mean, you just have to understand that there is nothing secret on the internet. So that would be my advice to anybody. If you don't want to explain it to your wife or your kids or your boss, you shouldn't be doing it because just because you think you're behind some firewall of security, you're not,
You're right. And if I can jump in again, I apologize. But you just said something that sparked my memory. When I was working on a campaign, we had a candidate that was super polished and just fantastic. I really was hoping that he would win, and he was pulling in the right direction. But then somebody found something that he had posted in a closed group and had deleted it 4 years earlier. So somehow somebody either took a screenshot, whatever it was on a closed group. It had already been deleted way prior to the campaign, but when it was published, it tanked his whole campaign, and he did end up losing by, I think, 5 percentage points. Wow. And I think we attributed it directly to that.
Yeah, it was a scandal. Yeah.
I'll throw another question out there. Is there an age where we say it's okay that you said that? Like, are we going to hold a 11-year-old, because 11-year-olds have Twitter now, right? Are we going to hold an 11-year-old accountable for something they said when they are 30?
It's another good question. I really go back to the motivation. Was it arguing with a friend on a post and they dropped in a racial slur because they're young and they don't know the appropriateness of doing that? Or was it someone saying, those people, they, in this case, I read the tweets. Ironically, she's her partner is TJ Ducklow that said that he would ruin a reporter. I will destroy you, and got fired by Biden. But her actual tweets were outdone by an Asian. Read one of her tweets and give me a 2 out of 10 on my Kim problem. Cross out all of my work and don't explain what I did wrong. Thanks a lot, stupid Asian TA. You're great. So she took the time to add the word Asian to a bashing of a TA So I think intent is important. Again, some ignorant 11-year-old kid is using the N-word because they know it's bad and they're insulting their friend or something. That's one thing. But if they choose to say derogatory things about a group of people, it definitely shows us a problem in their character. Whether they're 11 or 18 now. Again, an 11-year-old, they might have been arguing. It might have been a dare. They might have posted something just because someone said, "I dare you to post on your wall this horrible comment." So, I think obviously the closer you get to 18, the more likely I am to hold you responsible for what you did.
Right.
And, I think if you were 11, I think someone could. I think just like I said, they could be like, "It was a dare. I didn't mean it. It was
if
just."
If you're 11, first of all, if you're 11, you're not going to have your name on there. You're going to be like DX412. Whatever.
Right.
That's the other piece about some of the kids that are on there doing stuff
Right.
is you're not going to know their name when it comes time to hire them because they're already on Twitter. They're smart as hell.
Well, another example actually that we really good on this. That's definitely one of those line splitters. Do you guys remember when Kevin Hart lost the job hosting the Emmys or something because he had some homophobic jokes from like 10 years earlier?
Mm-hmm.
When whether it was in or out of fashion, I don't know. But he's a comedian. He's trying to provoke people, and obviously, cutting edge things are always part of a comedian's repertoire. And as I recall, they weren't extremely inflammatory. They were just not sensitive. He wasn't like he wasn't bashing. He was just making fun.
And didn't he just say, "I said what I said"? Didn't he kind of just say,
I think
Yeah,
he just
that's exactly what he said.
Said I'm a comedian and I was making jokes. I wasn't trying to be an ambassador to all people or whatever. And I think overall it blew over. As I recall, the tweets weren't horrible. They just weren't sensitive. He definitely wasn't being caring. So it's definitely a complex equation. I don't know. I guess you just have to kind of go case by case. And again, in this scenario, Kevin Hart in a way is his own freelance entity. Now he gets in movies and things, but movies are sort of each movie, the way I understand it, is basically its own business, right? It's got its producers and its cast, and they come together, they make a movie, so he can either get jobs doing that or not. Each one's sort of its own business. He's not Kevin Hart of, Universal Studios. He's not contracted to one studio. So, either Kevin Hart can find people that want to continue to put him in movies or not. It's a lot different than, Kevin Hart, the spokesman for Teen Beat Magazine, did this 10 years ago. So in a way, I guess an actor has an advantage that they're kind of a freelancer and can kind of, for example, Clint Eastwood has said horrible things politically for a long time, but people either want him to be in their movies or not. And I don't think anyone sits back and go, I can't believe, they took such a politically conservative guy and put him in a movie. Now, some of us don't care to see Clint Eastwood again, but other people do. He can make money if he can,
But there's a big difference between
evil. He hasn't been
problem with Eastwood's politics of late, and whether or not he crossed a line of sexism or racism, and that's a different ballgame. And I think we're in this weird flex period where we're trying to educate ourselves up through this change. Just in this conversation, just how we've approached technology generationally tells us so much about how this is a landing strip for society that's probably going to be 100 years long.
Yeah,
right? 2 or 3 generations, and then one generation just won't remember the life before any of it, and we're just in that transition. Zach, when we heard about this thing that was coming called the information age, and now I think that's in my rearview mirror. I think that's already happened. It's already out there. Now we're in a connection age or whatever it is. It's totally different. And we're in the other thing, and I got to just vent on this for a second, because part of what's killing me as a pastor, and I'm sure it's killing everybody who's in a corporate job and everybody who's a student, is that we are trying to push our 3-dimensional lives through a 2-dimensional can or screen, a camera, and we're trying to emote, we're trying to live, and we're trying to connect fully. I can't friggin' shove it in there. It's like you can only be so much, and it stresses you out. It causes you to feel the lack of other connections. And final piece, it causes me to take offense at the smaller things, because it's 2-dimensional and it's easier to nitpick and kind of be in that place.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas when we're together, you let shit go because you're in the room. I don't know.
Things are also fed to us much more out of context now. You know, what you're talking about too is in context. You're talking to your friend, you know, they're just making an off-color joke or something that really isn't appropriate, but you know, you're having beers, whatever. What we get now is so-and-so said, and it's like a 3-word quote. Sometimes it's not even the whole line of what they said.
There. Yeah.
Yeah. And it just sits there and it gets echoed and amplified. And I've said it before, you know, a lot of times when I see things like that, especially if they seem to not mesh with my understanding of that person, I often go and try to find the actual clip of, say, the whole speech, or 30 seconds before and 30 seconds after. And then I can think of, for example, there was a time when I've used a Trump example before, so I'm just going to use an Obama one this time. Obama said, you're fortunate, but you're lucky. Remember that at a commencement speech, a graduation speech. And it got turned into all these things. The Duck Dynasty guy said, I'm not fortunate, I'm not lucky, I worked hard for my money. And it just turned into this whole thing. Well, Barack Obama was addressing a historically black college graduation, saying, you young men and women are bright, intelligent, and all these things. You're very fortunate, but you're also lucky to be coming out of college at this time in history when so much has been done for you in the past. You know, the timing of your graduation is you're very lucky to be graduating at this time. And again, it got turned into this like some sort of socialistic statement that it's not about effort, it's about being lucky, and all these wealthy people, you know, lost their minds. Well, again, if you went and watched the speech for 30 seconds before and 30 seconds after, the message was blatantly clear. He was only talking to the people at that graduation and other people like them, and that was what he was trying to say, is you college graduates right now, young up and coming black people, you're fortunate, but you're also lucky to be here right now. So, you know, I think but it takes effort. I mean, you have to find where the speech was made. You have to go find, you know, I usually go to YouTube and find the video. I've even gone as far as to go to the White House press corps website or whatever it is, the press releases, find this transcript of the speech, find the phrase I'm looking for, and estimate where that is in the speech, and then go to YouTube, find the speech, and start playing the speech. You know, it'd be a 30-minute speech, and there's one little line. But the point is, there's a lot of things taken out of context now. And then vice versa, you have just hateful people across the board. I remember the lady who wouldn't sign marriage licenses for gay people in some state where it was legal, and that turned into this big political huff. And so, yeah, I think most important thing, and we've said it before on this show, is, you know, freedom of speech means you know your government can't come in and arrest you because you said the president sucks. It doesn't say that your family and friends won't disown you, or you won't lose your job because you said the president sucks. That's not the way it works. So there's always repercussions to your actions and your speech. I think we're doing a pretty good job as time's gone forward. You know, I think Kevin Hart, for example, sort of took his lumps, and I think he stayed, you know, able to make money as a comedian. You know, several people have made mistakes. They've taken their pain, and we've gone forward. So I think we're starting to get into a phase where, you know, the right amount of response is being given more and more. But, you know, who knows? Who knows? I mean, Kathy Griffin made a huge mistake acting like she cut Trump's head off, but she took a blacklisting for many years. I personally never thought she was very funny, so I really don't care if she makes it back or not. But she's taken her lumps. It seems like some people are letting her back. Bill Maher is periodically shoving his foot straight down his throat. I've again never been a big Bill Maher fan, but you know, I mean, I think overall we're getting to a good place. And you know, a guy like Matt Gaetz does something that's a whole nother level, and I predict when the facts come through on him, he'll be ostracized and cast out if the facts present the way they seem to. I'm not investigating him, so if I'm wrong, I apologize. But the way it looks right now, you know. So, I mean, I think we're getting to a point where things make sense. And yeah, if a composer in the Lutheran Church or Catholic Church, as it were, you know, was using music to molest people, then seems to me his music being dropped from a hymnal makes perfect sense.
I mean, cancel culture also relates to a certain level of, you know, power and visibility. I mean, not everybody is susceptible to being taken down because of some shit they wrote when they were 17 years old. You know, there's only one president of Teen Vogue. There's celebrities who are getting paid millions for these projects, you know, and if you find something that's really shady on them, Is it terrible to hold them accountable? I mean, it's not like the average person is going to be taken out of their post worker job for some shit they wrote when they were 17. We're talking about highly visible positions that are being held to a higher level of accountability than the average person.
Yeah. And then I also
let's move it. Let's move it further here. We could keep doing the theoretical dance. Let's pull it even further.
Yeah.
What happens when we find out that there is a group of police officers in a local police force who are engaging in white supremacy stuff and Klan stuff? I agree, Zach. How do we do that? Where's that at? Do we just put it through the news? Is there a way to expunge that? Because ultimately, that's the reason that I think part of this cancel culture stuff happens is because people have to find justice somehow in a system that they don't feel like there's really any truth to the justice system. And so the only way to do it is to crush you socially. How do we do it, Zach? How do we go through our police departments and fire them, right?
I mean, legislation, right? I know in various counties in California, you had police officers who would wear patches and symbols that were associated with various white supremacist groups. And that has been somewhat legislated out to where you just can't wear that, right? Like that is a fireable offense if you are caught wearing those patches. I think it's as simple as that. And that starts to weed out. Now, does that get rid of white supremacists? No, because a smart white supremacist will go, okay, I'll take off the patch and I'll continue to be a police officer, right? So it doesn't fully fix the problem. But in terms of the outright supremacy, I think that's one way you can legislate it out. I think stronger background checks of police officers should happen because those are the people we are kind of entrusting a lot, right? I mean, they have the power to brandish a firearm at civilians. Like they are given a lot of authority, a lot of power. So I think that we should be giving a lot of background checks into these people.
I was pretty surprised to find out how quick the training can be and how low the pay can be. If I'm not mistaken, the training is like 6 to 8 weeks and the starting pay is like $30K a year.
Right.
I mean, when you think about the job, when you think about a job of being a cop, you know, I think of it being 3 months training and a $70,000 a year job. I mean, just the way we're told by society, cops are supposed to be valued. And of course, if you paid cops $70,000 a year, you would be dealing with professional type applicants. You know, not maybe some of these other types that that's the people we're having issues with. I don't want to besmirch cops as a whole. I've always had very good experiences with police, but we all know there's those few. Well, I mean, I've had a few bad experiences with cops. I think we all have. You know, there's always going to be good and bad in any field. But I guess I was kind of surprised that for such a dangerous job, although I think there's been studies that say it's actually more dangerous to be a plumber than a cop, for example. But for a job that at least has fatal violence as a possible outcome, I definitely would have expected them to make more than a starting teacher. And so when you start thinking about the pay scale, then you start thinking about, like Zach's saying, their responsibilities and their ability to, you know, misunderstand a situation and kill one of us. You know, it's kind of a head scratcher that they only make $30,000 a year.
Right.
At least to start. Now, I don't know. Maybe as they become an officer, maybe it's a great job. And maybe a detective makes $120 a year. I don't know. I don't think so, though.
No.
And, you know, this got lost within the defund the police slogan, right? Because when people hear defund the police, they instantly go, no more police. But a lot of people who have the more nuanced take on it recognize we treat police officers like they are supposed to do everything, right? Police officers are trained as a hammer, right? I'm just going to keep using Jeff's slogan or whatever.
You're a licensed user.
Yeah, but there's so many other jobs that police are expected to do, but they're not given that training. So when it comes to defund the police, a lot of people with the nuanced take were saying, hey, let's either give them more money and they can allocate it to various departments that don't necessarily need to have a armed officer, or let's put more money into different programs where, once again, you don't have armed officers. So you have, in that aspect, you have police not engaging when they don't need to be, and police are only there when they really need to be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that 100%. There definitely needs. If I were a cop and the George Floyd situation had started to go down, I would have really liked to have had some sort of psych unit that could come out and help. You know, let's just for lack of better terms, let's just chain him to the bumper, sit them on the ground, and get somebody psych out here because we're not making any headway with this force. This force isn't getting us where we need to go.
Yep.
We need to hit pause and get somebody out here with some psych specialty or medics to deal with the drugs or what, because clearly there were lots of issues that were going south in that situation. But instead of all that, they just continued with the hammer. And that's when it cost him his life, is it was forceful restraint the whole rest of the time, when obviously there should have been some moderation to that and possibly other tools used. So yeah, I agree. I think cops and yeah, they're a hammer. Their main training in my mind is in weapons. We all know their conversation style, which is sort of very, very loaded questions, trying to get as much information as they can as quickly as possible, establish authority, demand you comply, demand your information, even when you're not legally required to give them, as I recall, any information besides your identification if you're driving. So they have this style that's very confrontational and abrupt because it works, right? I mean, I understand why they do it. It works. But there's got to be other. But then they're also drawn into these situations where they've got domestic violence, or they've got people calling because they're locked out of their car. I mean, they're dealing with just this broad list of problems, plus traffic stops and parking enforcement. I mean, there's just the world of things they have to deal with. Oh my gosh. So yeah, I think unfortunately they're really put in a place where they can't succeed every time, and they honestly, vast majority of the time, do a really great job. I mean, I'd like to think that all of us, even us liberals that hate things like that Virginia traffic stop the other night, we understand that those are few and far between, and the vast majority of police interactions are good. I also think we do need to address the fact that so many people get charged with crimes. I mean, as a country, there's just got to be a lot more situations that could have been handled with some diplomacy and some conflict resolution versus, okay, well, you're going to the cop shop today, you're going downtown. And I actually heard during the Floyd thing that there's more situations that now they don't arrest for. Because you got to imagine there's so many situations where you show up, someone's kited a check or something. Well, you take down their information and you charge them with the crime and you let them walk home. I mean, what's the point of taking somebody downtown for writing a bad check? I mean, all that does is waste a bunch of resources. Just let them go and charge them, send them the charging documents in the mail. I mean, you don't have to arrest everybody. So anyway, I think we're learning a lot. Honestly, in the George Floyd trial, I was extremely impressed with some of the resources they train with. I was not aware that they had the whole, respect for individuals, resource training. Obviously, it didn't work every time, but a lot of their policies, actually, I was very impressed with. I thought they had very intelligent trainers and very strong policies. But I think the cops have to realize we're all sitting here kind of going, well, when people are having a bad day and they end up dead, it kind of makes you wonder what the role of the police is,
Yep, exactly.
Jeff, on that note, and dialing it back to the white supremacy within the police organization, I thought that most precincts now had some sort of behavioral clause within their contracts. I can't remember where it is, so I'll have to look it up, but there was a group of officers that was fired because it was confirmed that they were in a white supremacist group. I don't know if it was specifically the KKK, but they were fired because it violated their behavioral clause within the contract.
So it gives them a fireable.
That has, right.
Right. I think Tang brings up kind of an important point here, in that I'm not sure that the vast majority of interactions with cops are good. I think maybe from our experiences, like for me personally, I've never had a bad experience with a cop, right? But I'm also a white guy, so right. I think that plays into it.
I mean, getting a ticket's still not fun, but if you were speeding and a cop needs to give you a ticket, that's a negative interaction, but you were breaking the rules. Rules had to be enforced. When I talk about negative interactions with the police, I'm talking about, getting assaulted, or the cop gets assaulted, or the person gets assaulted, or someone ends up injured, or everyone doesn't go home healthy. That's what I mean by negative interactions.
Yeah, I think there's a level, and I've experienced this before with various police officers. I've had a lot of great interactions with police officers too, but there are times where they're showing up in a situation and they've prejudged the situation to say this whole thing is bad and I'm not wanting to be here. And there's no handle to work with in that moment. And it turns bad really easy in those situations because of bias or whatever coming into the situation. So, and I think if you're in a various neighborhood, I think there's a lot of policing that happens with that attitude, just to say it nicely.
And I'm not blaming any victims, but I think people also misunderstand the role of a cop. The role of a cop is the executive branch, right? Their job is observing crime and taking action against it and interacting with citizens. So, for example, you get pulled over for traffic. That's a chance for them to interact with the citizen, and they may ask you where you're coming from, and if there's anything they need to know about in the car, because they're trying to investigate other crimes in the community. But what people need to realize is, if a cop shows up and Dave and I have been in a fist fight, and the cop starts, asking us questions or whatever, he's not a judge. His job is to assess were we fighting or not. And Dave and I have a couple moments to get together and get our stuff together and say, oh, we were just mad, it's over, and calm down and give one story to the cops, or we can stand there screaming and yelling and both get shoved in the car and arrested. So people need to understand too that they're investigating, they're not a judge. So you have two major possibilities. You can shut up and say nothing. First of all, they probably would enjoy that. You probably wouldn't get charged with anything if you just stopped talking and let them say whatever they had to say and let you two go home. Second thing, you have a chance to say, hey, Dave punched me first, I punched him back, we're over it. And maybe the cops drive away there too. What you don't do is stand there and argue and yell and scream and fight, because that you have to understand you're making their day horrible. But you have every right to do what you want. I mean, you're an American citizen. Truthfully, going forward, I plan to be a lot quieter with cops. Historically, I'm a talker. A cop pulls me over on the way home from a dinner when I've had 3 beers and starts asking me questions. I think in the future I'll just say, I'm not interested in discussing my evening with you. Where are you headed? Home. Where are you coming from? I don't want to discuss my evening with you. Because we have a right. We don't have to say I'm coming from a bar where I had 3 beers. You can just say, I don't want to discuss any more of my evening with you. And if you stop talking, there's not much to discover, is there? Now, you might get pulled from the car and get a sobriety check. Whereas if you'd been honest and said you had 3 beers and you're a big boy and you're not drunk, maybe they wouldn't. I don't know. It's up to you. But I think as a whole, we all talk way too much to the police when they're investigating something. I think for the most part, we should all start using our rights and saying, I don't want to answer your questions. Because I think everyone would agree it's not our job to make a case for a police officer. It's their job to investigate things. Now, that said, you see a crime in front of you, you want to be a witness, That's great. I mean, that's important. Hit and run. I've tracked down a hit and run driver before, followed them all the way back to their house, and they arrested him and he went to court and got charged with it. But, I don't know. Cops start asking you open-ended questions. It might make sense to just stop talking.
And then there's Chicago.
Yeah.
And then there's Chicago, where the police are part of a larger machine and have been for years and years. And maybe they're not anymore over magic time. But, you do have these cities that run under sort of different motifs, and police are part of a system. So I don't know. I hear what you're saying, and I think probably being quiet, and I respect the police officers, but I also know very well that there are machines at work. And Tim, if you move to a different part of Chicago than you live in, you'll be treated differently just because of where your address is, even if you're a white guy.
Yep, for sure. And, Chicago is a great example of an old city that has old racism and old systems in it that includes organized crime and corrupt politicians and corrupt police chiefs and ignoring murders that happen in the South Side and publicizing, minor crimes that happen among white people in downtown. It's just insane. It's insane.
I do think, too, we need to look at different procedural problems. I can't remember which case it was, but someone highlighted that in a lot of jurisdictions, if a cop arrests somebody at the end of their shift, because they have to process them before they clock out, they can get overtime. And so it's a way to increase their wages is to actually arrest somebody at the end of their shift. So I think things like that need to be looked at. You shouldn't be able to earn more money as a cop because you arrested somebody at the end of your shift. So in other words, in a situation where you may or may not arrest somebody, because it's 4:40, if I arrest them, I get another 3 hours of pay, which is overtime. Things like that need to be cleaned up of, people. Well, it should be a managerial situation within the police that if you notice Dave keeps arresting people at the end of the day, all of his arrests are happening the last half hour of his day, you may have an issue with Dave abusing the policies of the department. But more importantly, I would argue there shouldn't be any financial benefit for the cop to arrest people. They should be doing the right thing, arrest versus ticket versus warning or whatever, because that's the right thing to do. They shouldn't have a personal gain involved. And that was, I can't remember what case that was.
Crooked News has a good point I want to respond to. I wanted to say this before I put this up. I can remember, Tim, when we were in our training as young chaplains in the jail, and we were like, they're like, okay, stand against the wall when you're doing this, and then wait for the door and whatever. And then you can remember when they were like, and if if the bulls are coming, if the cops are coming, get the fuck out of the way, because they will take everybody down in between them. And there was a sort of linebacker motif to, if something went down inside, dude, it was fight time, right? Yep. And I lift this up because that's part of what it means currently in our American policing. And this is a very Crooked Muse, LA, as it says, too many cops were schoolyard bullies. And I know that because I know several guys who I went to school with who are currently cops and have been for a while. And I mean, you know, some of these guys were the dirty football players, man, just to be really frank about it. And now they've been lifelong police officers. And there is that meathead element to it. And I think, you know, essentially turning it into a different profession, saying, listen, you can't be a cop unless you got a master's degree, unless you can wrestle a knife out of somebody's hand without a gun. I mean, just the kind of confidence that would be to a human being to walk into a situation and be like, I can handle myself without a gun. But instead, what did you say, Jeff? It's 3 weeks, 5 weeks training?
I think it's 6 to 8 weeks of training.
Good Lord, you're not ready for anything in 8 weeks. I'm not ready to run the fries in 8 weeks. You know what I mean?
For comparison, you have cops in Europe that they're not even using guns, right? And they're training for 2 years or up to 2 years.
Exactly.
So
2-year training program.
And they're all about this. They're all about control. They're all about, which is what a lot of great policing is psychological control, mental control, understanding a situation, being intuitive, recognizing how your body can betray you in a situation and lie to you and make you make decisions because you're jacked up and ready to fight. You make stupid decisions at that moment.
The thing about the jail guards is a couple of times we could tell something was going down in an area we were heading into because all of the guards are standing outside the door putting on leather gloves. Before they even went in.
Yeah.
Before they even go in to evaluate the situation, they're putting on leather gloves in case they have to punch somebody as soon as they get in there. I mean, it's just such a violent, brutal situation, man.
GoLawEnforcement.com says it takes about 13 to 19 weeks on average, can be up to 6 months to get the police academy is 13 to 19 weeks. Now the question I guess would be, at what point do you ride in a squad car? At what point are you presenting yourself to the public as a cop? So I'm first of all, I may just be wrong. I may have cut it in half. It looks like it might be instead of 6 to 8.
So I gotta ask Dave this because he's
but I can be wrong.
He's a resource on this. Is there a way to rebrand this political conversation? First of all, is this a toxic political conversation to a libertarian-minded, conservative-minded person that we need better policing?
We need better policing. I don't think that's a political issue at all. I think everybody's going to agree with that. Do
you see us forming a line of division here at this point, or is there something we can agree on here? Because I'm hopeful about this.
No, I'm mostly agreeing with what's. I don't like to paint any sort of organization or people with the same brush. The comment about they were mostly bullies. I mean, I'm sure that is the case for quite a number of them, but I personally know cops that are very nice people. So I don't want to be too broad with. As far as the libertarian view, we don't trust authority to begin with. So Jeff is actually speaking my language when he's saying, don't offer up anything you don't need to. Do what's required. Ask if you're being detained, and then just shut up. And make the whole interaction go as easy as possible. I think some people do get themselves in trouble when they get into conversations with police. And it's important to remember that police are people too. If you are a dick to them, they're going to be a dick right back. And that's just, that's human nature there. So, I mean, the worst I've had with police, I think, in the last 20 years has been speeding tickets. And I'm always as polite as I can be, but any extra questions, I plead the fifth. I don't need to get into that. No, I'm just heading home. appreciate it. Can I have my ticket? And my favorite meme that I used to post is about the libertarian chicken. Why did he cross the road? None of your damn business. Am I being detained?
That's a good one.
Just keep rolling, baby. I like it. I love your shirt too, by the way. I think
Yeah, it is
I
awesome.
think there's a lot of wisdom in that
It's
shirt.
good.
Thank you. I wore it just for you guys.
That's
I
awesome.
think
That's
I think a problem we see too, by the way, that dovetails here is I think there's a lot of situations where people have very poor conflict resolution skills. And so they call the cops to moderate interpersonal situations. And that's a problem from several tiers. I mean, that's a problem from ground to ceiling. And so when they've got this cop who they're now using as like a judge of the situation. Well, now they're laying out their story. Everyone else is laying out their story. There's a lot of oversharing involved within. So now you should arrest that person. And of course, what happens sometimes, the person who called the cops to complain about these other people actually gets arrested because in telling their story, you find out that they were refusing to wear a mask or they called people a bunch of names or threatened violence. So it's happened more than once that someone's called the cops, for example, not wearing a mask and being yelled at by store employees, and then they actually get hauled off. So I think general conflict resolution skills are at a low point in history. I've said the example of going to the gas station and hear people just yell arguing over the phone. You know, I just think in my life, like, when would I be having a situation where I'm yelling at somebody over the phone arguing? Either it'd be someone I care about and I would go to them and have a conversation, or it's someone I don't care about and I wouldn't waste my time talking to them. Like, why would I be yelling at somebody over the phone? And I've seen it more than
public place.
in public place, correct? Yeah. So
I
what
would
is
be
going
in
on
my
in your life?
garage or in my basement, corner, yelling into the wall. If I was
Yeah.
Yeah, conflict resolution. I mean, my mom had a summer school at an inner city church called the Peacemaking Academy. That was like one of their big focuses was just peaceful conflict resolution. Like, I just think a lot of people lack the skills to say, Dave, I'm mad at you. I usually park my car here and you're parking here. And you might say back, well, I mean, whoever gets here first parks closest to the door. And maybe I say, yeah, but I need this spot because my passenger door doesn't work, and that one pins me in my car. And you might say, man, I didn't even know your passenger door didn't work. I'll tell you what, I'll let you can have the spot, or why don't I help you fix your passenger door? We could solve a problem without it. How dare you take my spot? That's the way most people start. How dare you take my spot? And that kind of communication doesn't lead to solutions. It leads to fights and arguments and hurt feelings. So I think there's a lot of room in our society for positive conflict resolution. But, it takes vulnerability. I'm going to beat your ass for taking my spot. Ironically, to a lot of people, feels a lot safer than I don't like when you take my spot. A lot of people would rather threaten than expose their emotions. So it's just there's a lot of things that all tie up together.
That's a really good point.
No, I think
Especially
something
men,
Yeah, especially men.
Yeah, go ahead, Zach.
I think something that we really do need to mention, though, is you could be Jeff and Dave and do all the right things and be calm, be quiet, do everything correct. Cops can still be dicks. Cops can still abuse.
Oh,
their
sure.
power.
Yeah.
Right.
And I don't think anyone that's died at the hands of the cops, like if they had just been better, they would have survived it or whatever. I'm not victim blaming anybody. I think just every book about how to avoid a traffic ticket has specific comments like, if you're driving down a main street and a cop pulls in behind you to give a ticket, if there's a drive right there into the end of a Walmart parking lot, most cops would prefer you to pull in the parking lot, get them off the street so they can casually give you the ticket and not be in 4-lane traffic.
Well,
Although sometimes sometimes cops say, stop right there. I've had them radio me, stop right there, because I was going to drive, 30 feet into a parking lot, and they're like, pull up, stop right now. Okay, well, he wants me to stop here.
You're right. There are tricks to the trade of both sides on that.
Right.
Pull back a second.
But I'm not victim blaming anybody.
Let's go into that moment.
Really yell at the cops to not die.
Let's go into that cold fear moment of a moment where, as an American citizen, the authorities say, I think you did something and you didn't. And you're there by yourself and there's one or two police officers. Doesn't matter the skin color, although we know this happens a lot more to people of color statistically. But there's that moment where they decide, you know what, I think there's more going on here. And there's nothing you're going to do, say, or dance or wait them out before they start digging in your car or going through your life or whatever. And that to me, beyond that moment, let's forget about before and after that moment. That moment is a moment that needs some level of accountability to the officer so that we know that this didn't start from some bullshit. Because the truth is that a lot of things that happen after that, And this is where the body cam thing comes in. Not only for, like, how is it that the police department or the city doesn't look at every officer as a potential liability out there and want to see that moment of, oh, now I can blame this cop for this entire incident because he did this at that moment and turned it personal. But that moment is frightening. That's the worst moment in your life, is the moment where the system comes personal at you and there's nothing you did wrong.
Well, there's a really good example of that happening. This happened 2 years ago, but the body cam footage resurfaced, and it's of a black man in LA who was literally just taking out the trash, and the cops pull up on him thinking he's a suspect from a call that was actually 3 blocks away. He did nothing wrong, wasn't the bad guy, until you have these cops pull up and instantly go to him and instantly put him under arrest. Like,
that's a situation that could happen to any of us. I mean, I understand. I'm sure it was a black man in that scenario, but that could happen to any of us. You could be standing on the curb, freeze. What are you doing? We're going to take you under arrest. In that scenario where you're standing there, I mean, it's easy for me to say.
The difference between that is there was a police call 3 blocks away. I'm talking about the moment where you just happen to be in the wrong place and this guy chooses you.
There's a lot of things, believe it or not, that we have as legal defenses that a lot of people don't utilize. One of which is an officer only has basically a certain part of their average stop to stop you. If they've stopped you for speeding beyond what you've seen on television, they can't just say, I smell something, I need to search your car. And you say, no, you may not. And they bring out the dogs, and the dogs smell your car. And then they, theoretically get approval from a supervising officer to then tear your car apart and everything else. The truth is they can't just investigate you until they find something. That's been proved through precedence. So, if you calmly comply and they say, we'd like to search your car, I do not give you permission to search my car, especially if you can tell it's starting to go south. You know what I mean? It's one thing if you have nothing to hide and you're like, fine, search my car. But generally speaking, I would suggest you not let them search your car. And the point is they're going to try and escalate if they say, well, for example, it's a classic falsehood that you saying you can't search my car is reason to search your car. That's not
exactly
true. You have every right to personally object to them searching your car. And if they say why, just be like, I don't know you. I don't want you in my car.
It's my Fourth Amendment right, bitch. Step back.
But the point is, you can politely resist them. And the truth is they can't just hold you there for 30 minutes until they get a warrant and open your trunk or whatever. They just, honestly, that'll get thrown out of court because all they had no cause. They were just dragging you through everything until you said the wrong thing and they search your trunk. A good lawyer will get you off, even if they open the trunk eventually and there's a human in there. I mean, the truth is they only have a certain amount of time for a traffic stop. If they're pulling you over for speeding, they can't just pull your car apart for 45 minutes and then charge you with whatever little thing they find. A lawyer will get you off. So again, just be calm, and you don't have to comply with them searching your car. Say no, thank you.
Right.
Maybe that's how it works.
I'm sorry, Zach. The key is to know your rights.
Right.
As a citizen, the onus is on you to understand your rights. Because I will say this, as much as I respect police officers, they know that not all citizens know what their rights are, and they know the buttons they can push to get to what they want to see. And if you know your rights, then you can defend that. You can protect yourself, even if you're not doing anything wrong or you don't perceive yourself as doing something wrong. They could find something in your car that maybe is wrong, and by complying and giving them that permission to search your car without a warrant or without probable cause. That's what you're talking about with probable cause, is when they actually legitimately smell something or they see some sort of paraphernalia or anything else. If they don't have any of that, they cannot search your car, they cannot detain you. And those are the questions that you ask. The first is, may I please ask why you pulled me over today? And usually, they'll tell you before you ask that question, but if you're not getting that, you have to ask that first. And then after that's disclosed, am I being detained? And if you're not being detained, once they say you're not being detained, you're free to go unless they're in the middle of writing the ticket. So know your rights and protect yourself. The onus is on you because you can't always trust those who are in authority, even though I do want to say that I do respect the police, but I know that there's a game too that can be played in the system. So Zach, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, I mean that's a good point, right? What I was going to say is, in California at least, the Fourth Amendment was being violated for a long time. I think at least as of last year. I haven't really done much research into it since, but I know as of last year, cops could essentially take money, take electronics, and claim, I think that money in your car, you're going to use it to buy drugs, right? So they can say that. They take it back to the station, and you never get it back. They effectively get to steal your possessions, and that's how it was in California. I don't know if it still is that way, but for a while, that's how it was in California. So I think there's the how it should be, and then how it really is, right? And I think that goes a lot with a lot of our amendments.
I agree. And by the way, someone said something about you can be arrested for resisting arrest. I never said resist arrest. To be quite frank, if they say you're under arrest, I would never say another word. By the time it gets to you're under arrest, the conversation has hit an end. You don't say another word and you go to jail. There's no reason to resist arrest. All I'm saying is, can I search your car? Can I look in the trunk? Can I look in your glove box? No. I believe they have a right to basically look anything through the windows. They have every right to get out flashlights and start looking through all your windows. But when they start opening doors and opening glove boxes and stuff, they are searching your car. And I understand someone said, well, you have to afford a lawyer and blah, blah, blah. Well, all I'm saying is it's better to create an obstacle, slow them down, make them work for their investigation of your car, because quite frankly, while you're buying time, they may get another more high priority call. Second of all, they may just become bored with you. There's several things that might happen before you end up having to go to court to prove your innocence. But if they start searching your car and they find something you didn't even know was in there, a friend of yours accidentally left a prescription bottle in there. Now you're trying to explain why you have an opioid in your car that's prescribed to someone that's not you. That's an example of a situation where, now if you know who it was, oh yeah, that's my buddy Zach. I just dropped him off at his house. He left his pills in my car. Well, they're going to call Zach, and Zach's going to say, yeah, I left those in his car. You'll probably be fine, but you might not. All I'm really saying is, we have kind of a childish view of the police that we're supposed to comply. And I think the argument should really be the other way. It's their job to investigate crimes. It's not our jobs to incriminate ourselves. That's really the biggest part.
But that doesn't come from the city or the county or the state like I believe it should. And that's what I mean by the accountability system of when and if there's a moment where an officer of the law decides to turn it personal or turn it wrong or turn it bad, or however you want to describe it, there should be a moment for the safety of the city's money, the state's money, and the citizens' person and sovereignty, that there should be a double check on that. And with the amount of technology that we have right now, we've fought body cams so that we can't see from their perspective what they're doing. But we have the capacity now with cameras in all sorts of ways, just on the vehicle, to make sure that there's a double check so that the city can be like, that officer screwed up, because maybe we're not going to get the, what is it called? The plausible, that's not plausible deniability. What's the term that allows them to be free? As soon as I'm scared.
Qualified immunity.
Qualified immunity. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's its own issue, but to put something in that place, to be like, to show sometime maybe there was an officer who was a total bully from the start, and say there was never a moment where you were scared, right? That would be fair for the city and the state to be able to see that and be like, you started shit with this person from the time you started talking to him. There was not a moment you felt scared.
Right.
You escalated the whole thing. There was no probable cause. You just pulled them out of their car because you wanted to see what was going on. As a citizen,
we should have that protection because we have the technology.
I agree 100%.
I think it would make a lot of problems go away if people knew that third-person video game view, was watching. Be like, dude, we see what you're doing.
I think you'd be surprised, too, if you guys have ever watched The First 48. I talk about it periodically. It's about homicide investigations, usually in big, big cities, Baltimore, San Antonio. Basically, if they don't get a confession or an eyewitness, it goes unsolved. The truth is the police don't have the resources we think they have. I mean, if someone's broken into your house and there's even fingerprints, they may or may not even come take the prints because it's such a low-level crime. They may not even – it's not like you're going to get this full CSI out to your house because someone broke into your house and stole your TV. Odds are the cops are going to write down the report, try and get a description of the goods. If they happen to catch somebody selling that TV on the side of the street,
exactly.
but it's going to be more, so the truth is the biggest piece of evidence that the cops have, and by the way, your boss at work and several other situations, is the oral recounting of someone saying, yes, I did X. That's really the best evidence anyone's got. So generally speaking, within reason, the quieter you can be, the better you're going to be if you're being investigated for something. Because it's their job to make the case. It's not your job to make their case.
Right. But I mean,
truthfully.
It's
also
good
keep your
advice.
nose clean. Don't do wrong things. Also helps if you're not breaking into houses and transporting drugs, and that also makes it much easier to stay out of court and jail.
Yeah, Jeff, you're starting to sound like an old bootlegger. You're running Shine at night on the side, man.
Zach, you got cut out. Zach, go for it.
Yeah, I mean, it's solid advice until the police don't do their job, right? Like the thing I mentioned a few minutes ago where the LAPD rolled up on a dude who was completely innocent, just taking out his trash. There was, you can watch the video. They have no clue who they're looking for. And the call was from 3 blocks away. There's no description of the person. They end up rolling up on a black guy who's taking out the trash. They get out of the car and they go and arrest him. Like there isn't a time where you can bide your time or you can talk your way out of it, or you could just be quiet in Fifth Amendment. They go straight up to him and arrest him. Right.
I would argue that situation, I would follow the advice I gave a minute ago, which is I would just be dead silent. I wouldn't say or respond to anything they said. If they're already arresting me, what else do I have to say? And then guess what? You go down to the police station, they'll read you your rights. We're here because so-and-so's house on 8th Street got broken into. I was alone at home. I was taking my trash out. I have nothing to do with any of that. And it's just going to end up being a big waste of time for the officers involved in you. And you may have personal loss of time. You might miss work. I mean, who knows? I mean, it's a tragic situation. But I mean, what are you going to do? You're going to suddenly become an NAACP spokesperson and argue with them on the curb that you're not the person they're looking for? I mean, my point is there's a time and place, in that scenario, that's sloppy police work, and they're going to waste your time. And honestly, I could be wrong, but if you stay calm and don't give them any reason to make it your fault, you probably would have a case for unlawful detainment. I mean, isn't it illegal? Yeah, false arrest, illegal detainment. I mean, you wasted my time. You arrested me for nothing. Turns out the suspect wasn't anything like me. Yes, it's a horrible situation. I'm just saying, especially in that scenario where you're clean, you're just standing there with your trash can. I think you have a chance to say something like, look, I've been in my house for the last 20 hours. I'm just taking my trash out. But if they say, we don't care, you're under arrest. All right.
And I think Tangerell has a good point here, Jeff. I got to say,
yeah,
you're expecting people to have no emotions, and the reality is in your scenario, you're being very analytical, and I appreciate that. It's true what you're saying, but if you are angry, do you have a right to be angry if someone comes and rolls up on you as a citizen, as a taxpayer on my property, and I'm taking out my garbage on Sunday night, and 3 cops jump on me? I have the right to be pissed. As much as I have the right to be on the things go sideways when the authorities come at you, right?
Right.
I just feel like there needs to be that ability with technology. I think it needs to be a priority that we just get around and say, listen, let's protect ourselves from these encounters as much as we can. And
you have every right. You have every right to get emotional. You have every right to call the cops pigs. You can do whatever you want. I'm suggesting if the best you can do would be to just be as quiet as possible.
The ideal response.
But yeah, you can lose control of your emotions and yell at them and resist arrest. You can do all kinds of things.
Honestly, to be brutally honest, that's why so many men of color have died at the hands of cops, is because they're like, fuck you, I didn't do anything wrong. And instead of like, oh, sorry, sir, it was my mistake, it escalates until someone's dead. And that's not an exaggeration in any way, shape, or form.
Right. And of course, there's situations where the people have done everything they're supposed to do and still got killed. But my advice is be as compliant as you can be, but you don't have to tell your whole story. But there's situations where guys have literally said, I'm going to go in my car and get my ID and get shot to death.
I think Marty is on the right track. And Jeff, you've mentioned this in previous shows too. The importance of technology, of these of the body cams and the cruiser cams, and making sure that they're working and always working properly. And there should be punitive measures if your camera is not working and it's done consistently. So it looks like maybe you are manipulating the system and not allowing your camera to work properly at all times. Now, if it's a one-off, that's a different story. But no, there should be some accountability when it comes to those, because that not only protects the citizens, and really that's the most important aspect of it, but it also protects the police if they're doing their job correctly. They can't be blamed for errant behavior. It protects everybody as long as everybody is doing their job right. And it needs to be a bigger issue than what it is. So many times, and the one that you've brought up on the show, Jeff, where the cop actually ended up shooting and killing somebody, and their car wasn't working. That no go. That cannot happen. That's completely unacceptable. And so huge upgrades, I think, should be made those, and just make them virtually infallible. And that's going to solve a lot of these issues, because when it does get to the court, when they how the approach was done, if it's like you said, if it's not done to the letter, they're going to throw the case out, even if you were guilty. If it's not approached correctly, there are loopholes to protect the citizens.
And I think some people in the comments are misunderstanding me or the topic at hand. I don't think anyone should die at the hands of the police. That's not the police's function or job. They're not Judge Dredd. They're not to be executing people. There are scenarios where the police officer's life is in danger, like someone's holding a gun, pointing it at them. I think we would all agree that a cop has to make a decision. Also, there's a situation where I'm one citizen pointing a gun at another citizen. I'm pointing a gun at Zach, and a cop pulls up. That would be another situation where I may be fatally wounded because I'm risking the life of another person. So there are very few situations where I think cops should kill anybody. So I want to be really clear. You have every right as a citizen to say, fuck you, cop, get off my property. You don't have my permission to be here. You're in the wrong place. I'm not the guy you're looking for me at all. You have every right to say all those things, and you should still live through the day, and you shouldn't even be charged with extra crimes. I'm just saying, I think you'll find that you'll get through the situation the most painlessly in general, with quietly complying. I'm not saying resist arrest. I'm just saying, can we search your car? I could be wrong, but I don't even think you have to answer that question. Can I search your car? Right. I mean, just sit there quietly.
Say no. No, thank you.
Or no. Why not? Because I value my privacy. I've even thought about this. I could be wrong, but if a cop said, "Can I search your car?" Couldn't you just ask the cop back? Would you let a cop search your car? Why would anybody let anybody search their car? Of course you can't search my car.
I asked the questions here, Jeff.
Yeah, I asked the questions. Do you think you're smart? Well, yeah. I think the answer is no. Off the top of my head, I don't think you should search my car.
I read an article about body cams that said we need to fix the legislation because a number of states don't have any legislation in place to ensure that the body cam footage has to be turned over, that it can't be edited in any way before it's turned over. So in essence, even though there could be body cam footage, it's still up to the police department how much they reveal and when they turn it over.
I have a feeling a lot of these situations where, the camera wasn't activated and da-da-da-da-da.
That's exactly what I'm saying, is I think the camera was activated and they just, figured out a way to cut that feed. And they're like, well, we lost that footage. We don't know.
I'll put it this way. Some of my friends have dash cams, and one of my first questions was, well, is there a dump button? Because the last thing I want to do is lose control of my car and my dash cam's used as evidence against me. I mean, I don't want to record my own action.
That's why it needs to go to a dispatch or
a
cloud function where someone else
be a cloud
is part of their job.
They're
like,
we all know with Periscope it's doable. We all know with Periscope you could take your cell phone, go to a march, hit live stream, and that's going off to a server. And someone could drive over your phone with a car. That stream is still out there, saved on a server to your account. So obviously it's doable. Yeah. It's just a matter of how serious we're going to take it. And I agree with what you're saying, Tim. I would again hope as citizens we pay for these cameras, there would be policies in the police department being activated that this footage is properly cataloged and recorded. And I guess that's a question we should all be asking our local government. I happen to know the spokesman for the Wichita Police. I mean, it'd be a good question, I guess, to call up and ask him or ask him in a press conference. What is the Wichita Police Department's policy on body cameras? The footage is always collected. What are the audit steps? Because that's the other thing. I've managed a lot of people. If the policy is you always have your camera on, well, if the only audit is, well, something bad happened, let me see your footage. Well, I don't have any footage. That's not a system. A system would be, hey, you pulled 3 people over tonight. Let me see your body cam footage. Well, would anybody complain? No, I'm auditing you tonight that your camera's working properly. You know
I think it's
that's
interesting
the way,
too.
That's the way a process works. Is you have audits and spot checks. You don't just wait for someone to die and go, oh wait, you don't have any video. Well, maybe they haven't taken video in 3 months.
Part of our broken politics, things don't get done. We don't talk about things. And I was just asking. I just Googled the question. When did we first have body cams come into the national debate? And the first body cams were in 2005. Was when the technology began. And so if you think about our politics between 2005 and now, we haven't revisited this. I can remember body cams became, Dave, this is kind of to your point, sort of a technological political front of body cams, right? It's an issue. Where are we at on this? Are we going to do it? And we haven't revisited any of the technological discourse since body cams came into place. Who's watching them? How are they reviewed? At least not in a political platform discourse nationally. It's just, Are you for body cams or against them? Do they work? Do they not? Like, there's so much more nuance to the computing. We are now in a situation where we ought to be talking about, should there be 3 or 4 drones on each cruiser that release as soon as there's a traffic cam so we could see it from all angles?
That's gonna happen for sure.
Why are we not having that conversation?
I know.
I know
they just lift right off of the lights, whoop, 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 and then they just start recording everything.
At least the Virginia stop had good footage.
Sorry.
I want to know what Dave.
Oh, sorry.
I promise.
Dave and Zach.
Does go one step further than that. As far as the problem with the body cams, when that's investigated, as far as they're not working, or really any investigation within police departments, so many police departments do their own investigation. So it's not a third party that's coming in and looking at it. It's really tough to trust the transparency on that. And so that's part of the legislation that should be done too, is that there should be someone else investigating what happened in any given situation. And it shouldn't be the police department that polices itself. And that's been a serious issue even before body cams, but even more so now.
Yeah, I agree.
Oh, and one more thing, Zach, before I'm seriously for the body cams on police officers. I am also really for legislation that would put body cams on our politicians. I think it's past time for that.
Damn, dude. Drop the mic, Dave.
Wow.
It's like, bam. Gates, you're gone. We got the footage, man.
If you're making a campaign phone call or debate or discussion, you have to have this camera on.
It'd be like if you ever been to a NASCAR race, you can get this little tuner and you can like watch in camera for each team, and just be like that. There'd be like C-SPAN 1 through 600. You can just watch every single politician all day.
Can we expand that to lobbyists too? Just as
no, for sure.
If you had a camera on every politician, you're going to get all the lobbyists.
Yeah. Trump would have just had like a Diet Coke in front of his camera 24/7. You wouldn't be able to see anything. He'd be like, no, you can't see that.
Zach, you're up, dude. Sorry.
Yeah, so I really want to know what Dave thinks about this, but we're kind of getting into a space where me, as I think the most far left person in this panel, is wondering, when do we hit the line of police accountability to infringement on my personal rights? Because like if we have drones in the sky with cameras watching all of us, that's kind of freaky to me, and maybe there's something to be said about having watching our politicians, but also, are we watching our politicians to see who is making, like, it feels too big brother, like that's just something that's coming into my mind. So I really want to know what the libertarian thinks.
I thought you were a lefty socialist.
Sorry.
People got layers.
Dude, I think this is absolutely good. I'm sorry. I'm just lifting it up. Sorry, Dave.
No, not at all. No, Big Brother is always a libertarian issue. It's different though when you are in public and there's cameras everywhere now. There's several cameras. There's just security cameras on different businesses. I mean, anywhere you're being filmed. I guarantee if you're in a city, some kind of camera is on at all times. So if you are in a public space, you have no expectation of privacy, and you shouldn't. And so if we're talking about drones covering the police squad cars, fine, great. anything more that can protect us as citizens and protect the cops from, from being accused of things that they didn't do, that's great. That's the public square. Now, Big Brother kind of gets more into the thought police and that kind of stuff where, you don't want an invasion of privacy in your personal effects. When it gets into the Fourth Amendment aspect, you don't want the ability for the government to come into your home or even into your car, into private places of your car without your permission and you accepting that. So I think there's a dividing line there between what you can expect to be private in, and the public square is definitely not it.
Yeah.
Well, I think that technology is just really the key for policing the police. I mean, we need to try to level the playing field so that we can keep an eye on bad cops and also elevate good cops, and the same thing for citizens who are acting terrible towards cops and crying foul, And then we have legitimate film to help us understand what happened when things go wrong. I mean, it just seems like it's absolutely necessary.
Yeah, and I think there's a market solution to it as well. I think, and I think Biden would do well if he did this. I don't know if they'll do it or not, but if I was on his team, I would tell him to do it. Start paying, figure out a way to move police salaries up, move qualifications up. Maybe even do it through, as Tim, as you just said, if there's able to be positive reinforcement to make $5,000 more because you were this professional this year. There's ways to incentivize it through the marketplace to say, you know what, you can step up, we can do this. It's public dollars, but it can be done in a way that rewards behavior and curates health within the systems. We know how to do this stuff, but a lot of times there's just too many entrenched authorities and interests. A lot of it's the police unions of all things. They're really, really entrenched and they hold power, and they're using that union stuff in many ways to protect people's individual issues rather than the collective needs of the community. So
the only union a progressive doesn't like, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I think they didn't they put some legislation through too, where like now cops record moves with them job to job. Like it used to be, you could be, say, a bad cop in a sheriff's department, and then you could just go work for the city. And like, it was like your records were two separate things. I believe they passed legislation because, like truck drivers and pilots and lots of other careers now, it's the same thing. It used to be if you were a truck driver and you got too many speeding tickets or safety infractions, you just went to the next trucking company and you just rack up infractions again. You just go company to company to company. But they decided, the DOT or whoever decided that, being a trucker had to, your record had to carry forward. And I believe police officers are the same thing now. I believe they have to, they're basically, their disciplinary folder has to travel with them for their whole career. And that's a big improvement.
We've got just about 5 more minutes tonight. And I want to ask a question. I want to ask the audience as well as the panel here tonight, just a quick question. Have your news media habits changed since the election? And I'm curious as to what they might have changed. And I've just been noticing it in my life. I'm not watching nearly as much cable news. It's just not on as much. I don't have that drip happening. And it was, God, I didn't need it, but it was on because I just kept assuming something was about to happen.
Yeah.
And it did. It always did.
It always
did happen.
My usage of news media like yours has dropped dramatically. I find myself watching it Thursday evening, Sunday evening to prepare for the show. I do find something like what's happening with Matt Gaetz to be very interesting, so I watch maybe a little more because of that. And I've been watching the George Floyd trial coverage, but of course that's more documentary style than really news. I mean, I could be watching that on C-SPAN or anything.
Yes, that feels to me like it feels a little bit like the news media has quit trying for. It's like they're glad to have this so that they don't have to do anything else.
It's definitely it's the escalating cycle of class clown behavior by Donald Trump has ended, at least as far as I'm concerned, and so that makes it he's moved exclusively to Pornhub. Yeah, it's probably higher quality characters and acting, quite frankly.
And according to the studies, you're not the only one, Birdman. Lots of people have joined you.
It's like, you know what?
Yeah, I definitely watch the news a lot less. I mean, I think Trump was a master of the media. I mean, you have to give him credit for it. I mean, he controlled media for 5 years, and you know, and
they were willing
everything he did. One thing he did was worse than the next, but you know, he never had. I mean, we can go through all the things he did that were terrible and dumb and stupid, but you know, I think his vagueness saved him a lot. But you know, there's really very few of those just sort of aha quotes. I mean, asking Georgia for the exact number of votes he needed to win, that was definitely a zinger, aha, you know, quote. But for the most part, he did a really good job of like, you know, these people and those people don't like these things and the other thing, and you know what I mean. He spoke in such a vague way that you could kind of believe he was saying whatever you wanted to believe as an individual. And that was pretty brilliant if you stop and think about it. So yeah, he was just god awful for so long that every day he'd say something stupid, you know? And so, you know, now, we've got to, I mean, I think it's probably natural that when your party wins, you lose interest. You know, it's more, I guess, exciting to be critical than it is to be in agreement. And so, I've lost a lot of interest in watching the news. But I had a phase maybe a year ago where I also stopped watching the news. There's an aspect of watching cable news that's like soap opera. You know, you start watching a soap opera, you think it's really important, and you're watching it. It's all this drama, and it gets you drug in. You know, you get interested. Whatever soap opera. I mean, Game of Thrones, doesn't matter. Any kind of drama series, you get drawn into it, and you think it's important that you watch. You think something important is going to happen. And guess what? Specifically with soap opera, you can skip 4 weeks, and none of the major plot lines have changed. It's all this tension and drama, and none of those shows in between really would have done anything except for get you ramped up and excited. And I think cable news is the same way. You know, you can watch every day, and every day you think something important is happening, but then you can also turn it off for 4 weeks and turn it back on, and you're all caught up in 20 seconds because the truth is it's just day to day. Someone said something dumb, someone we like said something good, a bill passed, and then you know the next day it's the same thing again for the most part. So yeah, cable news can be very addictive, and I've several times taken a sabbatical, but I'm probably on my lowest cable news intake now than I've been in probably 6 years.
I was definitely watching the news every day, and I would watch in the morning and then in the evening, and I kept waiting for the biggest next terrible thing to happen. And I never watched the news now. I had to like sit down twice. Like I watched for like half an hour yesterday and half an hour today. I sat down intentionally to try and catch up and see what was going on in the world because I'm just like, dude, I don't even know what's going on. I'm keeping tuned in on the trial because I want to see what happens with Chauvin. But even that, I just tune in for the 5-minute highlight reel in the evening. I'm like, boom, 5 minutes, got it. And then that's my news, you know? I'm just not tuned into the news anymore.
Dave, has your news media intake changed since the election?
Honestly, no. I have a routine. In the morning, doing certain things, the news is just on in the background. Always has been, probably always will. And just throughout the day, whatever comes up on my feed, and news alerts on my watch, and so I don't know that I've intentionally curtailed any sort of news. I will say that I get less alerts now, on my phone, on my watch, and probably because the election's over. But no, I haven't changed my intentional intake.
So habits haven't changed. Have your how do I ask this question? Have your is there less intensity with listening, or is there more intensity? That's not the right way to ask the question, but as a political hack, I usually live with the news on too and the feeds dripping. Sometimes I drink more of those feeds than others.
Mm-hmm. Has my attention level to it changed?
Maybe that's the way to get to it, yeah.
Possibly, yeah. I know, like last month, because I switch between Fox News, MSNBC, CNN's trash. I don't do that one. But I try to get both. And last month, I couldn't get anything out of Fox News except Cuomo and his scandal. And so I was a little turned off. I mean, I think I had heard everything I needed to hear within 5 minutes of the first broadcast, and so
I'm the same way. That's why I'm
switching.
I was like, "There's nothing to listen to, man."
Right. So I did find myself switching a little bit more often, and so maybe that's the only difference.
Yeah. And Zach, as a student,
I never really listened or watched cable news before, so that's continued. I never liked Fox, never liked CNN, never liked MSNBC. Most of the way I've gotten my news is from reading Politico, NPR, New York Times, Washington Post, those articles. If I want like commentary, then I'll go to Lefty YouTube. But for my facts, I stay consistent with just reading it online. Never been one who's big on cable news.
Well, so the reason I asked the question is because I did something in my house last week, which was a total I did it on purpose because it was Easter and, I shaved my goatee off and it was like change is all afoot. So it was either baseball or BBC. And what a freaking whiplash that was to just be like, oh, let's really learn about Myanmar. Let's really learn about what's going on in Africa right now. And it was one of those moments where I was like, dude, I've been freaking playing a game that's bullshit for a long time. And, I had to take a shower because it was icky.
I hear you, man.
You had to wash the stink. You had to wash the stink of cable news off your body.
Like, what's on Fox? What's on MSNBC? Shit, man.
It's addictive. It's definitely addictive.
Well, they always say breaking news. Breaking news. We've got more vaccines coming out today. Like
one of the correspondents dinners, they made fun of Wolf Blitzer for that. They're like, "Calm down, Wolf. Everything's not breaking news." Yeah, Wolf Blitzer is definitely every ad he comes back. Breaking news.
Breaking news.
COVID-19 is in America. It's like that's a year ago, man.
It's a variant. It's a variant.
And if you watch the channel all day, they've whatever he says is breaking news, they've reported on it for the last 4 hours. It's not
exactly
nothing's breaking during the show even, but he calls it breaking news. Of course, they all do that. Of course, they're all trying to make it interesting.
It's an interesting way of recognizing how we're processing this stuff going on right now. So
yeah.
I would like to thank everybody for being here tonight. Dave, thanks for making time for this space. I really am glad that you're with us. Zach, as you continue through midterms, dude, our thoughts are with you, and I hope you're doing well. Tim, dude, you need to take a walk and just, actually get in your kayak and just fuck off is what you need to do.
Yeah, Tuesday, I'm going to take off.
And Jeff, dude, you just keep fucking rolling, man. It's one night is politics. You're becoming a network unto yourself. You got the game show network going.
Yeah,
it's good.
I had one of those moments tonight where I got mesmerized by Jeff when he was talking about how he researches an excerpt he heard from a speech, and he's gonna go find the original speech, and that might take a couple hours, and he's gonna find the YouTube video, and that might take a half hour to find the action. I'm like, dude, you saw this thing, and you're like 4 or 5 hours into like finding source material. I freaking love that about you, bro.
I think we're talking a half hour. I don't know if I've ever spent 4 or 5 hours tracking it.
I love it.
I do try and get to the bottom of it. Yeah, I've been hosting Jackbox games as just something different, because we talk politics on here, and then the other thing I don't like doing is getting on any social media and just talking about everybody else that's on that social media. I just find that really annoying. It's hard to make new friends when that's what you do, because all you're doing is talking about the same 50 people, and if someone's not in that circle, it's alienating. And so, yeah, I'm kind of trying to go in a new direction, not just have endless hours of political.
It's part of the transition into new things. But I do appreciate our conversation here, because I think
definitely,
if nothing else, I need it, and I really appreciate the honesty.
No, this is the right amount. Yeah, this is the right amount.
To get into some of these. I mean, cancel culture is crazy stuff, and you don't solve it, but you gotta you got to be able to lean into it a little bit. And
we didn't really get to it, but I think we can all agree that no one political group has created nor routinely reinforced cancel culture. Cancel culture belongs to everybody at this point. You know,
it rolls around. Yeah.
For a long time, it was being accused of the liberals, and then you got Donald Trump boycotting Coca-Cola. So clearly both sides have done this for a very long time. I believe the phrase was coined in 2017, and I believe it was directed directly at the liberals. But the truth is, you got Colin Kaepernick, you've got Trump's battles with Rosie O'Donnell. I mean, we could go through all these examples. We talked about liberal examples, but there's plenty of conservative examples where they've written off a company or an individual due to something they didn't like. So the truth is, it's not unique to the liberals nor the conservatives, in my opinion.
Zach, last word. Were you going to say something?
No.
Any final predictions tonight that anybody has in their hip pocket that just can't wait to drop? If not,
I hope Zach was right. I hope Matt Gaetz gets arrested soon.
Ooh, that'd be so sweet.
Maybe a topic for another show, but I do think possibly by the time I'm back on the show, the HR 1446 might pass, which is expanded background checks. So I'm predicting that.
interesting.
Oh, good. That'd be great.
All right, I'll take the opposite. I'm going to be pessimistic here.
Oh wow, it's not going to pass.
Wow.
Well, there we go. Good. One of you is going to be wrong.
I
Yay.
can't wait.
All right.
Yay.
That's how you leave a show right there. Leave them hanging.
Cliffhanger.
That's good. Thanks everybody for being here. Thanks for America Heals. We will be back on Thursday night. Dave, thanks for being here. Zach, thanks. Tim and Jeff. Peace out, everybody.
Peace.
Yeah.